Live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Cage Report. My name is Mike Knockenhauer, alongside Colton Alder. It has been a minute. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been, as we've looked, over a month since we've done one of these. Yeah. I mean, the last time we did one of these was the winter sports preview, but we're back off a break. We have a lot to talk about over 4 different sports. Lots going on this week. Lots coming up. Starting off, let's just jump right into it. Bowling. How's it been shaping up so far?
So they've had 2 matches so far this week. Their first was against Buena Vista on Tuesday, and usually a bowling match takes about 2 hours. This one took 3.5.
Yeah, our media advisor, who's also one of the assistants for the bowling team, he was saying how the meet took a lot longer than normal, but they were able to still pull out the win. So I don't think that. And after all of it, I don't think anyone cares too much, but he was expressing how long it took.
Yeah. Also, loss versus Norfolk on Thursday, so they split their 2 matches so far this week.
Absolutely. So, do we know when state's coming up for them? I'm assuming it's sometime soon.
Yeah, if I remember right from last year, it's early to mid-February.
So yeah, that should be regular season should be closing out there soon for the bowling squad. So best of luck to them as they go forward, as they've split their 2 meets this week, as we said. And then swimming, we'll move on to them. Massive duel tonight against Burke.
Massive indeed. They're up. It's their pink out. They support a certain type of cancer awareness every single year. I don't know if it's like one specific type of cancer or if it's just like different for each of the guys, but they do that. So I think that's pretty cool. Definitely one of the best traditions that we have at Prep. But also, this swim team has been one of the best in the state so far this year, coming off of back-to-back state titles, looking to complete the three-peat, and they've got their senior night next week as well. So a lot of really important meets coming up this year for them.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's kind of one of those things where for them it's on their swim cap. You write the name of someone who has been affected by cancer that you know. So that's another part of the meet that's pretty special. And every year it's a big deal for them, and for a good reason. They mean, yeah, cancer sucks. Yeah, one of the biggest meets of the year. It is every year. So it's definitely another one of those things where the team's starting to kind of close in on state. And in terms of swimming, you got to keep going. It's really the kind of thing where you can't lose a beat the entire way through. So tonight's definitely a big meet for them.
Yeah, just keeping up the momentum they've gotten the last couple of years, and early on this year, they have a lot of guys that are really talented or going to swim in college. Ryan Mendlick, Austin Lewis, Cam Newton just committing to Carlton a few days ago. A lot of guys that are going to continue their swimming careers at the next level, and this team's got a ton of talent they have for years, and they're looking to put it all together and win another state title.
I mean, yeah, Coach Beck he's really created a dynasty here at Prep, and as you said, looking for the three-peat, which would be a really big deal. Speaking of a team that hasn't had a lot of success with state tournaments in the past, wrestling, still in a very, very, very good spot for their first ever state title. They dropped the meet to Scott, the number 1 team in Class B. Lost some meets and lost some matches in there that they didn't expect to, and it was still a very close meet. Scott only winning by a few points.
And they also hung in there in a lot of rounds that I don't think a lot of people expected them to hang in on heading in, especially that match between Cam Green and Ben Ziola. Ziola, one of the top wrestlers in the country, and Green.
Yeah, it was such a good match.
Yeah, he was so close.
He was so close. But yeah, they won senior night. The 2 nights before that, Elkhorn South. But then they had the meet with Scott. And I wasn't there, but I was told it was one of the best environments that we've seen out of a birdcage in a long time.
Yeah, and I know having Coach Fisher in our math classes obviously meant a lot to him these couple meets. And for as many people to show up and support the guys on their senior night and in a matchup against the number 1 team in Class B as well, I think that definitely shows how far this wrestling program has come the last couple years.
Yeah, I believe at the time both teams were ranked in the top 50 nationally, correct? I was going to say they were 46 and 47. I was going to say it was like they were neck and neck. And it played out that way. It was a very close meet. A lot of matches that were decided towards the third period. But it was Scott that ended up coming out with it. But you and I, we can atone for this, or we can vouch for this. This team means so much to Coach Fisher, and it's really heartwarming to see how much support has really backed this team. It's not really, wrestling isn't really something that has been super well known in the past, and I feel like it's really turning a corner. And if you look at this roster, it is so young. I was even looking at it just a few minutes ago, just the rankings of Class A. So many of these guys you have a couple freshmen and then so many sophomores that are ranked so high in the state. So this team has so much potential. It's crazy.
Yeah, and they're going to continue being great the next couple of years, even as Adonis leaves next year and some of the juniors on the roster also move on the year after that. But even as it goes on to like 2-3 years from now, the amount of guys they have right now that have been elite as underclassmen is just shocking. They've got a ton of talent, and they're going to be a contender for state, if not the favorite, over the next couple years.
Absolutely. For this season, absolutely the favorite, most likely, for the Class A title, which, as we mentioned, would be the first state championship for wrestling in Creighton Prep history, which would be a huge deal. So they head to Bellevue East tomorrow for Metros. Very likely could come out with a win in that meet as well.
Yeah, and getting a Metro tournament, I think, would be a major motivation for this team to continue to build upon what they have and carry that into a state title run potentially. This is going to be a huge meet tomorrow.
Absolutely. So good luck to wrestling as they head to Metros and they eventually move on to the state tournament looking for their first ever state championship. We'll move on to basketball. Cardiac CP feels like it's making a return here on the hardwood.
Yeah, the amount of nail-biting finishes has been crazy over the past couple games. It feels like I'm having a heart attack every single time I see this team play at home. The amount of just like crazy endings they've had, especially against Westside and Millard West, just it's been incredible.
And I feel like it's a testament to just how much parity. We have said this all season long at this point. There is so much parity in this state for basketball. There's like a pool of probably 15 teams that could make the 8-team field at PBA in March.
And I mean, even looking outside of like the top 12 or so teams, I mean, Papillion La Vista knocked off the then number 1 team in the state in Papio South.
And they had full control of it. They ended up winning that game by double digits.
Yeah, and then Millard West heading into prep on Tuesday night. And in the third quarter, they looked elite. They scored 31 points. They couldn't miss a thing from the field.
They were not playing like a 4 and 5 team.
Yeah, and honestly, the fact that prep came back in that game shows a lot about the resilience of these guys. I mean, you look at it, Cooper Knight, after he had a rough ending to the West Side game, comes back against Millard West, scores the first 10 points of the fourth quarter. Big reason why we won. Connor Peters had a rough couple games heading into this one. Delivers big in the fourth quarter, hits the game-tying 3 with less than a minute to go. Just the contributions from guys who have been able to put mistakes behind them and improve every single game. That's been a really impressive thing so far for this team.
I liked how you mentioned Connor Peters. He really struggled shooting threes throughout that game, but when it came time to make threes, he stepped up and he made threes. And that's what I like to see out of a lot of these guys, is that there are more guys, I think, on this team than past teams that are able to step up, willing to put in the work, to put the team on their back. Like we saw our classmate who's in that room right there, Torrin Carter-Brown, go off to even pull us close enough to try and tie the game against West Side. He even had a chance at the end of regulation to possibly win the game. But yeah, there's so many guys on this team that feel like they can really take over a game if they get hot at the right time.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You mentioned all the guys who have been so great for this team this year and stepping up in the big moments, and that's not even mentioning their best player, Trinell Parker. All of those guys aren't even the top guy on the team.
No, not at all. I mean, Parker's averaging upwards of 16, 17, 18 a game, and he wasn't even in the game for a chunk of the second half. He was on the bench a lot of that third and fourth quarter with 4 fouls, and this team was still able to mount a comeback. It really shows just how much chemistry this team has built over the year. There's been so many comebacks, even if they fall short. They obviously came back against West Side. They came back against Millard West. They've kept games close that really I'm gonna stop on that point, but I don't really know how I was going with it. But it's early. It's early. It's Friday. It's Friday. It's Friday. It's fine. It's fine. But yeah, the resilience of this team I have been incredibly impressed with. No, Papillion La Vista, first game of the year. Down late in the fourth quarter, able to tie things up, to force things to overtime. Down in overtime, able to force things back and eventually win that game. A lot of people were disappointed in that first Papillion La Vista game. I was very, very impressed. I said before the game how this is 80% of this team has almost virtually 0 varsity minutes, and they did not necessarily play their best ball, especially from beyond the arc. I think it was one of their lowest 3-point percentage shooting games that we've had all year. But that kind of win is something that I like to use the term battle tested. I feel like this team was tested in battle tested early, and it's starting to show throughout the year, especially in a game like West Side. You're down double digits with less than 4 minutes to go, and you force overtime after a 13-1 run. That's veteran stuff right there. Those are guys who they've put in the time, they've put in the effort to really play for, like, they understand what they're playing for. And when they're on their back, they've got guys. There's guys all over the team that will pick each other up, and it's really impressive to see. And we just saw it again immediately Tuesday night, Millard West giving up outscored 31-12 in the third quarter. You were up double digits at halftime, and all of a sudden you're down 9 going into the fourth. A lot of teams, that is incredibly discouraging, and it's really, really hard to keep yourself motivated. Right out of the gate, it was a 3-point game, or what was it? It was a 2, or it might have been 1. Honestly, what was the run to start the fourth quarter? Honestly,
I think it was like a 7-0 run.
It was Cooper Knight. He hit a 3, he hit a 2, and then I think he hit an and 1.
Yeah, I think Cooper had the first 10 points.
Something like that. But that's what I'm saying. This team is resilient, and they're quick with it. They were within 2 minutes. They were within a basket. This team is incredibly impressive to me so far. 2 of their 3 losses are a combined 5 points to what is the number 1 team in the state. I've been blown away by this team's resilience so far. I just really hope that they're able to keep it up going forward.
Yeah, those type of games against Westside, even if they ended up losing both of those games, they were both extremely winnable. The team showed a ton of fight. And wins like Millard West, those are the type of games that give me a lot of hope for this team heading in to a potential state playoff run. They've shown that they can handle the pressure of being down late in games, having the odds stacked against them, being against some great teams and being able to come back and stay disciplined and strong. That's something that they're going to have to carry with them over the next couple months. And if they want to win a state title, they're going to have to channel a lot of that. I
like how they're also able to win games in multiple different ways. They can play really refined basketball, but sometimes everyone who's ever watched or played basketball in any magnitude can tell you that there are nights that shots aren't falling. And what I like about this team is that they can play refined, precise basketball when they're able to. But when shots aren't falling, they can become very scrappy, and they can get stuff done even when offense isn't clicking as well as they would like. Westside, I wouldn't say it was a highly offensive game. It wasn't. Actually, it wasn't at all. I would say that the Westside game was a sloppy game on both sides, and I think no, not that. We're not, no. I think that the energy of the building really got to guys, and I think the youth on both sides really showed through. But at the same time, both teams were able to find ways to find success. But literally the next day, you go to Lincoln against a very, very good North Star team. You put up 50 and you win. That's impressive stuff. Their defense, they showed up, they played they did what they needed to, and their offense, which wasn't having a good day, was able to suffice just enough to get things done because their defense was able to step things up. That's what Coach Lutke's always prided prep basketball on. That's what he said before the year. He's like, we're going to play hard on defense. That's what our brand of basketball is. So the fact that that's able to play out about halfway through the season is super promising to me. And then against Millard West, a more highly offensive game, they were able to step it up in the third quarter. They outscored by 19 in the third, and then they go and they outscore their opponent by, they ended up winning by 3, so they were down 9. They ended up outscoring Millard West by 12 in the fourth quarter. So the offense steps up when it needs to, and the defense does as well.
Yeah, and I mean, just seeing how at points this season this team has really struggled to shoot the basketball, and they've only lost 3 games despite playing a lot of really good teams. Being able to win games where they haven't been able to hit their shots, like the game against North Star, game against Papio in the season opener, they have been able to overcome a lot of that, and I think that just reflects on how resilient this team is. I also think that turnovers are going to be a main point of emphasis for this team. They need to limit those. Watching the 2 games over the weekend, they committed Max Prep says 20 turnovers in the Westside game. It feels like a lot more.
I would say it was probably closer to 25. It was, as I said, I felt like that the energy in that building was electric that night, and I really thought it showed. I think it rattled a lot of the guys, because there was a lot of very I don't know how to say it. Just I think sloppy basketball. I think sloppy is the best word to use. Is just it was sloppy basketball.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that they committed so many mistakes offensively, and that game went into overtime, and they ended up losing by only 4 in overtime. This team's got a ton of potential when they just put it all together and focus on not committing as much mistakes.
Absolutely. Didn't mention the top 5 battle tonight at Westview. This team is knock on wood, currently undefeated on the road. But this is probably their biggest road test so far. Obviously, they beat Westview back in the Metro tournament by just a couple points.
Only loss Westview's had all year. So
Only
far.
loss Westview has had all year. 11-1 Westview, hosting 9-3 Prep. So yeah, that one's tonight, 7:00 at Westview. And I think that should do it. Anything you want to say before we sign things off?
I mean, looking at this team's success on the road, knocking off Bellevue West after that Millard South game where they looked the worst they have all year, turning around, Torrin Carter Brown dropping 34 in that game, just adds to the points that you were making about like how resilient this team has been. They're going to need some of that against Westview tonight as well. I mean, this team is at their best when Torrin Carter Brown and Trinell Parker are really the top 2 guys. They're performing really well. So they're going to need to step up in order for this team to really make a deep run. But a lot of the other guys on this roster have also made a great impact, and they're also going to be very important.
Absolutely. I believe this to be out of time, so we will cut things off there. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in this morning. As always, Mike Knockenhauer alongside Colton Alder, thank you so much for watching Cage Report. Enjoy the game tonight and have a great rest of your week, your extended weekend, and we will see you next week. Thank you.